Okay, so after a small hiatus, we're continuing with our Shiur on Mareh Yaakov. So this is a parak written by Dr. Jacob Seaman, and we have the privilege of translating his book for his children and for other people who are interested. The concept of the parak is that each Ta'am HaMikra, each reading note that adorns either a word or a group of words, has a specific meaning, both based on its shape and by the type of note it is and by its position, and as to whether it connects to other notes, note groups before or after it. And by adding specific meaning in a general sense to each of these notes, we can see concepts and other things that flow out of Torah that we might not have mentioned or seen based on this drush, this type of inference type of perush to Torah, based on, again, Ta'amei HaMikra. So we just read Parshat Breshit last week, and it's been a custom every week to try to look at something that is in that week's Parsha and see how the translation would follow along with it. So before we start the service on Shabbos, and when we finish, we will often say Adon Olam. So the first line is Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra. What do these words mean? The Lord of the world, who reigned before all the creations were created. So one of the tenets of faith, one of the 13 things that Jews believe in, is that God existed before the rest of the world was created. Where do we see this in Breshit? So the word Breshit, if it's going to refer to an existence of God before the entire story that the Torah is going to tell us, is going to have a note that's going to focus us backwards on God's existence beforehand. So which note is that? Tipcha. So we know that when we have a tipcha, it tells us that there was something before, and we're connected to something that was before. So, very odd. First word of a book, you wouldn't think that it tells you that there was something that happened before this book started.
Yeah, prequel.
So, all of a sudden, Breshit starts with a tipcha. It does not start with a mercha. It does not start with something that's telling us this is the beginning and things go on from here. It tells us there was something before all of this began. All of this, before the world, before existence, before creation, Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra. God existed there. And a lot of...
God had other worlds also, that he created a lot of worlds and destroyed them.
The mention of other worlds comes later and is referenced later. And the question is whether this refers back to it or whether this is just referring to God's existence before. And I don't have a specific answer to that, but it doesn't seem to be implied by the sense of Reshit, of beginning, or by the letter Beit. So I'm not sure. I'll have to ponder on that and see if there's a thought to that or not. In fact, the printed letter Beit implies that as well. So when we look at a letter Beit, it's got three sides that are holding something and looking forward into the world, but it's also got a little tail on the bottom that goes back. So it tells you, before this world begins and moves along and moves forward, that there was something beforehand. And because we've just come off of Sukkot, I'll continue with the drush that I gave on Sukkot as well. That also references this letter Beit. So we as Jews hold the side of east to have importance because the majority of us live west of Jerusalem. So to face the wall and to face Jerusalem, we face east. So if east has the most importance, it must be the top side of our letter Beit. So if we're looking at the top side of our letter Beit, if that's east, then the wall to the right-hand side is south. The wall that's on the bottom is west. And the open space going forward is going to be north. And we have a variety of psukim in the Nevi'im, in the prophets, that tell us that the danger that's going to come to the Jewish people is going to come from the north. So when we see that the world is created, we introduce choice. We go away from God's singularity, and we go to the point where things can either go right or things can go wrong. So from that north side, the open part of the letter Beit, we've introduced choice, and we've introduced the possibility that things that were perfection before might not be able to continue. So how does this fit into Sukkot? How do Ashkenazim shake Lulav and Etrog? You shake east, south, west, then north, then up, then down. So if we can master east, south, and west, then we can face the north. And if we can face the north, then we can bring up to down. So the letter Beit from Breshit, the way that we shake the Lulav and Esrog, and the concept of east and north.
And all that's based on that you said that the top of the Beit is east.
Is east.
And where do you get that from?
Because we give importance to east, so of course it would be on the top.
The question, of course, is what about the Sephardim at that point?
So I'm waiting to hear an exact description of the way Sephardim shake Lulav and Esrog, because I spoke to 3 different Sephardim, and they all gave me different girsot. So I will wait until I see it in a Sephardi machzor, and I will try and see. So there's a different custom. They actually face the way that they turn their body to face the way that they're going to go, and the directions are different. So I have yet to find the teretz for that, because I don't know the exact Masorah there.
Just as a sidebar, we mentioned so the perfection is facing south, like Florida. I just want to point this out. The line
Maybe a lot.
Maybe a lot.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, what is the marking on top of the Beit? I can't see it very well. Is that supposed to be some kind of plisha, or I see like a little circle?
He's just put an asterisk there, because he's making specific comments on the letter Beit as well. So
that's not actually
when you it's not a Tama Mikra. So he separated it out from its word to give it a special meaning. And had he written the Perush to Shmot, I'm sure that the Aleph from Anochi and Aseret HaDibrot would also have been separated out. If you listen to some of the shiurim that are given by Rabbi Akiva Tatz, he tells us that Torah is an organic unfolding. You have things that are planted within the very beginning that end up being folded into it, and if you can derive enough, you can derive everything that comes after by going back to the very first line. So his example is, when you look at Aseret HaDibrot, when you look at the first 2 Dibrot, that there is a God and there shouldn't be any other God, well, all the other mitzvot really fold into that. Either you accept God or you deny Him. And by the way, the second one folds into the first one. If you accept God, of course you don't deny Him. And the first one folds into the word Anochi. If you accept that God has this presence, then of course you would believe in Him. And you can derive all of the positive mitzvot, all of the negative mitzvot from all of the positive mitzvot. If you've got a relationship, why would you break it? And if you've got a relationship, then of course you recognize God. And if you recognize God, you recognize Him by the name that He chose to appear, Anochi. And by the way, you can derive all of that from Aleph, from Yechidut, from singularity. So he tells you that things unfold like that. Similarly, when you look at the Bereshit, we're going to see that. So the Aseret HaDibrot is the spiritual unfolding of the world. When you look at Bereshit, this is the physical unfolding of the world. So, if you take the letters of Bereshit, you can see that bara shet. He created things for 6 days. And Yireh,
Sheish or Sheit?
shet is Aramaic for 6.
Right.
Yireh, Shabbat. Be fearful of Shabbos. We're getting from rearranging
Scrambling the
from
letters.
rearranging the letters.
I'm always doing it.
There are another 4 or 5 of them that he brings down.
But there's 7 20 altogether.
So the concept is that all of the principles of the world, all of the principles of creation, fold into Bereshit, and in fact, as we mentioned, they can all fold into the letter Beit that tells you there was something from before, and then it opened up into the world of possibilities that we have now.
And we were talking about trees before, and also trees, like the minute everything's contained in that seed to make the future tree. Same idea.
So again, the letter Beit in this translation just is separated out. He gives it an asterisk just to tell you that he's going to talk about the letter Beit as well, because it's a tool. It's something that the Torah is using, and it's not just randomly. You would think if the Torah was going to begin somewhere, it'd begin with the letter Aleph, begin with the first letter in the alphabet. Why did you come to the second letter? And there's a reason. The second letter has a symbolism, and tells you other things. And by the way, you can fold physical existence into that.
Yeah.
You fold spirituality into singularity and an Aleph.
If I remember correctly, my father Al Shalom also mentioned that in terms of this world, of the physical world, it's all based on the Beit, on 2, on yin and yang, on opposing forces, on balance, and multiplicity. But the Yechidut is only Anochi Hashem. The only true one is Kadosh Baruch Hu. So that falls in very well with what you're saying. This is the physical creation of the world. It's based upon the Beit. The Beit begins as peace. Anochi opens up God's introduction, as it were, to this world in terms of his spirituality. It starts with the Aleph of Anochi. Because until, as you said, until you recognize that, nothing else follows.
Yes, we're all happy with that. Okay, so we're going to pause the tape for a second, and we're going to